And reminder, we are having a reception and people are receiving awards and they are to be lauded. So please stay. But the last panel discussion, about which we are thrilled, is the current state of the diamond market. And participants in this discussion include Russell Kwiat, Chief Operating Officer of Kwiat, Olivia Landau, founder and CEO of The Clear Cut, Matt Shamroth, partner of M. Shamroth and Sons, and he is, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think the Secretary of IDMA. Is that right? Did I get that right? Okay. And Amish Shah, who is the founder and CEO of ALTR, and Ronnie van der Linden, who is president of Dimex and vice president of the World Diamond Council, amongst many hats that he wears. And the moderator is, again, Rob Bates. And so we welcome you all, and we can certainly shuffle the cards if you're not thrilled with the order. So.
Where's Amish?
Yeah, I'm looking for Amish. Yeah.
All right. Can I go? I can go, right? Okay, so the name of the panel is the current state of the diamond industry, and really people could not be happier in the diamond industry right now. So it's such a it's such a great time to have this panel. I used to actually, my grandfather was in the business, and it's in one of my books that my parents used to joke that they'd ask him how business was, and it was either terrible or worse than terrible. So I think right now it's worse than terrible. Would you say? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So. Anyway, we're going to talk about the current state of the diamond industry. We have people here who deal only with natural. We have people who only deal with lab grown. We have Ronnie, I guess, who's certainly dabbled in both. And we've asked the panelists, to be respectful of other products. There's obviously a lot of debate about lab grown versus natural, and you can go on LinkedIn and people will argue about that 24 hours a day. But we're hoping to have more of an informative discussion right now. So I guess I've asked all the panelists to kind of just give me their sense of how things are going, what are the strong points, what are the weak points. So I guess I'll start with Olivia.
Okay. So we only deal with natural diamonds, but we do give away lab-grown diamonds for free as a travel ring. So I'm familiar with pricing for both. I would say for now, obviously pricing for lab and natural is falling. What we've noticed in the past few months, at least with our natural diamond engagement ring business, is that sales have increased and demand has increased for natural, and our AOV has stayed the same. And I think it has to do with a few factors. I think, post-COVID, natural diamond pricing went up dramatically, and that was at the same time as lab-grown was being introduced as a new category that was, quote-unquote, the same thing but more affordable. I think now with both prices decreasing and natural diamond prices kind of going back to what 2019 pricing was, we're seeing a lot of our clients being able to afford what they thought they may not be able to. So they're spending the same amount but getting a little bit more. So that's been a positive spin from the past year or two. And then in terms of what we've been seeing from our lab-grown purchasing, we don't sell it, but pricing right now from what we're doing is about $90 a carat certified for our travel rings. So I think as both are decreasing, one is kind of decreasing a little bit quicker, but people are getting the option to purchase natural at a more affordable price point.
And so this travel ring thing that you basically give the diamond away for, it is kind of an identical diamond, or it has the same basic stats?
No, so
specs?
because we deal with a lot of like fancy shapes and antique cuts, it's really difficult for us to give like an exact replica ring. So we just say it's a complimentary travel ring. So we just do round brilliant diamonds from 1 to 2 carats. And if you purchase any natural diamond engagement ring from us at any price point at any time, if you're a past client, current client, future client, we will give you a free lab grown diamond, and you can set it in a solitaire to wear when you don't want to wear your natural engagement.
And is that, do you get sales from that, or is that, like, how do people react to that?
I think we do get a lot of inquiries and people really wanting to opt in, because I think in the retail landscape of lab grown now, it is kind of confusing for the consumer, because you can look online at the same exact lab grown diamond, and maybe one online retailer will sell it for $1,500 and another will sell it for $10,000. So if someone says, hey, like, I can get a natural diamond for $10,000 plus this 2 carat lab, it seems like a great offering.
Right, and you said the average order value is staying the same, but you're seeing an increase in volume.
Yeah, recently.
Okay, Matthew.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of something so exceptional. When I think of the diamond industry, to me, I think of the people. And when I look around the room, some pretty exceptional people. And in today's current environment, money being expensive for the first time in over 25 years, election year has never been good for our industry in general. And today in the US, regardless of what one's position is, I think our country is more divided than it's ever been. So when I look at the overall environment, I think we're doing pretty good. And I've never looked at it as natural versus lab. I think you have diamonds, which by in and of itself, the word means natural. You have a diamond market and everything that goes with it. And then whether it's lab grown, whether it's colored, whatever it may be, every market has its own drivers, its own clientele, and how the consumer looks for something, how it's represented by the retailer, I think is where that story happens. And for me, I don't like the word transparency. I like the word clarity. Clarity is kindness. And every market has a different driver. So if we're talking about the US market, we're consumer driven. But the diamond industry is global. And I hope I helped answer the, so when you're, sorry Rob, you had asked a specific question about, is there a softening? Sure, but there's also less goods on the wheel today than there has been in a long time. So there's actually a shortage of diamonds in certain sizes, certain areas, certain shapes, all the above, which is healthy given the current environment. But as an overall in the US, I'd say the US is still pretty strong if I look at everything in totality.
Okay.
Thank you.
Amish, yeah, how long do you, first of all, you've been doing lab grown for how long?
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And but ALTR is only about like
ALTR is 8 years.
8 years.
The first fine jewelry collection we put out was in 2006 at JCK.
Right. And you also have another brand now, correct?
Yes, we have a direct consumer facing brand on the premium segment, Jabbar.
Okay. And how, so tell me how things are going for you.
So, thank you everyone, and thank you Lisa especially for the opportunity. So when I look at lab grown, just to give you a little bit, when we talk of the State of the Union, I think from a category perspective, currently when we always talk about from an industry perspective, from a jobs perspective, the category currently employs about 1.8 million people. Out of which 700,000 people have been basically transitioned from the earth mine diamond category. So
Those are cutters, you mean?
yes, on
primarily,
the cutting
primarily.
segment. So you have 1.8 million jobs at this point of time. The Earth Mine Diamond segment had employed about 1 million people. 700,000 of those in the last 2 years would have lost jobs. From a quantity perspective, the category is now at close to 40 million carats, because a lot of these numbers don't always put out. Most people have no idea. There's about 40 million carats that are coming into this system every year, out of which about close to 10 million carats of rough are for larger diamonds. Consumers have consistently asked for sustainability. The conversation of sustainability keeps coming in. As an industry, traceability has always been a conversation. One of the things, from the created diamond category, we've been able to take the initiative that 9 of the largest growers in the world are now actually certified for sustainable diamonds, and very importantly, certified sustainable, as well as importantly, that accounts to about 1/3 of descender diamonds that are now coming in from the engagement ring category. So that's very, very interesting. Also, over 1,000 retail stores now offer consumers 100% certified sustainable diamonds that have a net zero impact. Moving on to the retailer segment, the share of the engagement market, we're at about 62%, 62 out of every 100 rings that are going as engagement to the consumers have lab-grown diamond centers, which will finish
in
at
the
about...
United States.
Sorry?
So
In the United States.
yeah.
The United States is about 73% of the lab-grown diamond category at this point of time. The growth from last year to this year in terms of dollars of goods coming into the United States will be a little over $10 billion, with $2.6 billion already imported in the last 90 days. And this is factoring the change in the pricing structure. So the carats are going up. Of course, the prices have adjusted to what the demand and supply has to be. So you have close to 66, 67% of engagement rings will be lab grown this year, and over 80% retailers in the United States offer lab grown diamonds as a choice. It was almost 0 in 2015 for engagement rings. It was 6 out of every 100 and 62. Very, very important point, which is margins. The margins in Earth Mine that were running in the 40 to 45% for the center diamonds and the bridal category for the Earth Mine diamond category is at an average of 65%, and for the premium segment, which is in the branded area, runs at about 80%, bringing it at about a 64.5% average, with a net dollar amount higher per sale than the previous category. From the consumer part, for the consumer is currently spending almost the same amount of dollars. So the average order value for retailers that are presenting the product and offering the choice with proper semi-mounts or in fine jewelry has not gone down. This is very, very important because that's something most people are always thinking of. The net size is at 2.41 carats, also pushed up the engagement segment for Earth Mine at about 1.37 carats as an average, which used to be much lower. So it's helped both the categories moving up. Fancy shapes are at about 60% of all sales in the created diamond category. The average, from a pricing segment, pricing part that's always being talked about, technological advancements, and I can speak for this as a grower, technological advancement, improvement in productivity, and the ability to produce more at the same for the same amount of growing time, and increased betterment in technology in terms of cutting and everything is one of the key reasons. One, the grower cost has gone down. It has gone down tremendously because I've been a grower since 2006 when the first growing is when we did, and for the CVD technology when we started in 2012, getting the white diamonds in 2014. What is also important is for us not to forget that diamonds are a component, not a finished product. Consumers buy finished product. This is, when we talk of pricing, this is the first time ever in this industry that diamonds are no longer priced off a piece of paper that's printed every Friday, and inventory for the people is valued in the safes even without them moving their finger. This is the first time ever that diamond pricing is directly subjective to demand, supply, and this is where the volatility in the diamond prices is seen. And one last thing that I will say, making margin is not a crime. Actually, our industry, first time ever, and I think from the fashion industry, anybody who's following, who knows that Gucci runs at about 18-time markup, we're actually one of the only luxury and fashion industries where retailers struggle for margins, midstream barely adds value outside of, if you take banking out, they barely add value, and manufacturers, which is on the labor side of the world, are always struggling. So our industry is finally getting to a point where retailers can actually book margin by design, innovation, and giving their stories to the consumer with diamonds that have traceability, because all these certified growers are giving a 99% traceability. So I think we're departing away from the last generation and moving to the future of diamonds.
Amish, can you just, because some of the numbers for the United States as far as sales and margins and
Sure.
stuff, can you where do you get those, or
The data is the data for the United States comes a lot from what Iran puts out. The data for overseas exports and everything directly comes from the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, and a lot of data sheets, which I'll be very glad to put forward for anybody who would like. Most of my data is at actual, so I actually have an 18 to 20 page document that I have right now that is as current as this morning for shipments coming in. Just to give you an idea, in spite of last month's imports from previous year in polished diamonds in the United States from India being down 37%, Created is actually helping keep up the consumer sales, because those numbers will not directly match.
Okay, and Ronnie. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. And it's nice
Ronnie
to
doesn't
be
like
here.
to talk, so please.
Yeah, not at all.
Very
guys.
shy person.
Incredibly. I mean, and I think Rob, you said it all in the beginning. We're all happy in the diamond industry, and we are happy in the diamond industry. Two things. One, Lisa, IAC, thank you for inviting me to be here, along with our co-panelists. And I would be remiss not to mention two gentlemen who flew a very long way to be with us today. Mr. Cavalieri, president of Sibjo, Mr. Metla from OTC, Africa and Italy. Guys, wow. Thank you for joining. Impressive. All right, so let's talk about the industry. I'm not going to look at, I'm in both. I'm in natural, I'm in lab grown. Actually, I'm in lab grown since 2000. I was there with the general out of Sarasota, Florida, and became involved, and took a lot of heat for it as well. Like, how could somebody like yourself be involved with lab grown? Well, we are where we are today with lab grown. We've seen natural and the lab grown industry bump heads. What we're hoping is that we will all coexist, because that's what will happen. Innovation, that's a part of the natural side. Technology, that's a part of the natural side. Prices have fallen from both, yes. Lab grown's fallen, natural's fallen. But you know what, guys? I travel the country. I just came back from a motorcycle trip. We talk about the economy, as Matthew brought up. I look at the East Coast as one economy. I look at the West Coast as one economy. Travel Middle America. Have a look at Middle America. You'll understand why business is quiet right now. You'll understand that we have the perfect storm out there for everybody. We have the Russia debacle going on. You heard Mr. Brad Brooks-Rubin speak on all the sanctions that are being implemented, whether it's diamonds or gold. And by the way, after I heard him speak about gold, I said, yay, diamond industry. We're dealing with Russia. We're dealing about this much, and we're dealing with it. They've got, gold seems to have some critical issues to deal with. But you look at it, you travel Middle America, you see people out of work. I was talking with a young lady in a restaurant who is moving to Florida because she can't earn a living managing a restaurant. Okay, this is reality. Reality, my customers out there, the retailers, getting goods back from the consumers, grandfathering that we talked about of merchandise, reselling of merchandise. That's coming back in because people need money. There is, we're in an election year. I forgot who mentioned, somebody here mentioned, Matthew, was that you? We're in an election year. It's always difficult, and we're in a different environment when it comes to an election year. I mean, look what just happened this past weekend. Horrific. No matter what side you're on, you don't want to see something like this. So let's talk about the diamond industry. We have hiccups right now, not pickups. We'd love to see movement in the industry be slow and steady up, come down. People have referred to the Rappaport list coming down. Well, you know what? It came down for a reason, because prices were dropping. And by the way, it's not dropping in all categories. Prices are dropping in certain categories. They're actually lifting in other categories and kind of staying stable in other categories. So to say that it's just dropping, but what's happened is it doesn't help anybody when there are these large discounts out there. So what is the industry doing? I have conversations with colleagues of ours from India. There's a monthly conversation of a group of us. We talk about the United States, we talk about India. And what do we do? What do we talk about? We talk about the demand, the consumer demand. What are we doing? You're going to be talking, I'm sure earlier, you heard Sarah speaking and Tiffany speaking and loads of others talking about compliance issues and all of that we are dealing with as an industry. But right now, if you own a company and you want to sell, whether you're in retail or wholesale, you're talking about doing business. That's what we're concerned about, and what does it take to do business? So we deal with our clients. We try to please them in any which way that we need to. The diamond industry will remain. It's not going anywhere. It will get stronger after the elections. I am mighty convinced of that, barring no unforeseen tragedies happening around the world. But it will get stronger. And mentioned about, I think Matthew also mentioned this, about limited inventories. Yes, there's limited inventories. There's limited merchandise going through the different laboratories today. There's struggles. India is struggling at the moment. Okay, they're back in, liquidity is not strong in other parts of the world. It's not strong in Europe. It's not strong in India. The diamond industry, the U.S. market, is the strongest market out there right now. We have other markets that are faring okay. So where are we? For some of us that started in the lab grown, early on, and you have those that are dealing with the growers, it's a different type of business. Those of us that were polishing it, it's gotten slower for us as well. The natural side of the industry, we're just going to stick to our guns. We're going to provide to our retailers the best that we can. We're going to support our retailers to the best that we can. We look at Mr. Rappaport's list, as I was mentioning earlier. He dropped it, okay, but I'm going to maintain my price. So regardless of what the discounts were before, if it was, a minus, I hate using minuses in Rappaport, I like using dollar figures. So let's say, it was a minus 30 and that represented $10, and now after dropping his list, it's a minus 50, but I am not changing my $10 price. That will remain. The discount now has become shorter. And I hope, having talked to a number of my colleagues, that we'll all do the same, because it's a big part of supply and demand. Supply is very limited at the moment. Demand is also limited, but we hope that by the time September rolls around, the holiday season rolls around, that both the natural side of the industry and the lab-grown side, for those that are working in it, there'll be a demand for it, and the consumers will wake up and make purchases. I want to see how much the jewelry is bought on Amazon the next 2 days. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, by the way, thank you, everybody, for giving up your prime day to come up here. We appreciate that. I know it's a holiday. Russell.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for having me here today. I'll give a perspective from kind of brand and retail and a little bit more downstream, but also a little bit from the manufacturing side of things. The environment is no doubt challenging, but challenging is always an opportunity to differentiate and kind of push forward. And in our 117-year history, we've always been about trying to differentiate, which is not easy to do in diamonds, as everyone knows. But that's really what we've been about. And years ago, we started, what's our strategy? And it was not to get into lab grown, but to really differentiate what we do on the natural side from the storytelling we created, our cuts, and it really pushed us to do something different because we felt that that is critically important to, if the market share is shrinking for natural, is to really differentiate within that and grab what we can from that. And we've seen that, and we're also incorporating origin, which is, I think, a huge thing, as well as, you know, the sustainability. And it's a story that the natural industry needs to tell more, to be less disparaging about a competitive product which is not going anywhere, but to focus more on what we're doing. And so that's where we are. The challenge that we face in this market is we are very focused on where the rough comes from. Botswana is the best story that we tell, and when you want to get the best sources, the rough is still holding its prices relative to some of the other rough coming into the market that people are buying polished. And so it is challenging to do that, and in a declining environment where you're holding a price or even paying the same or more today, that's become our challenge. But that's on us to continue to justify, tell the story, and market and do that. So it's not an easy environment, but it's pushed us to just be better at what we do and to differentiate more. And we've seen, our natural diamond bridal business grow in the last 12 to 18 months, which, in this environment is very encouraging.
Bravo.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday, actually, and he was kind of making the case that, okay, if natural diamond prices continue to fall a little bit, that may not be the worst thing in the world, especially with lab grown out there. This person's inventory will be devalued, but he said he felt in the long run it'll be healthier for the business to have kind of less of that kind of differential between natural and lab, and for natural to be kind of more affordable for the average person. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you agree, or?
I'm not sure I agree with that. When I first saw when lab grown really was taking some market share, I actually thought when the price was too close and it was at higher levels for certain clients, and I would say clients for us, actually saw that as an alternative, right? It's especially at the higher end, the luxury, price does drive people. The higher price, the higher perceived value, and so if someone at the time was spending $20,000 or $30,000 as opposed to $40,000, they felt that it was a real alternative. I think that client, I'm almost certain that particular client, if I don't know exactly where the prices are, say it's $3,000 today, I don't believe they would have made that purchase as their engagement ring sale. It wouldn't have felt as if it was the alternative. So again, I believe there's going to be a market. I just think early on there were people because the price was too close. So I don't know if I don't want to say the farther the price the better, but I don't know if that's the correlation.
Matthew?
Rob, I think it's important to make the distinction between the two. We're talking about two different markets with two different products. First of all, just as far as I go back to the clarity aspect, it's not earth mined. Only approximately 80% of all diamonds are mined in the technical term. The rest come out of the alluvial riverbeds. Take Namibia, comes out of the ocean floor. They're not called mining companies, they're producing companies, and the diamonds are recovered. So when talking about diamonds, if you're talking about it for clarity with something else, everyone's referring to it as natural, because when you get to the quote-unquote earth mine, you end up really talking about 80% of the stones, and I think it's a misconception. But the softening of the market for natural is very different than the price dropping on the synthetics or lab grown. In the Ronnie and Jeff, in the early 80s, you had a de-internally flawless 1 carat. It ran up to, what was it, $65,000 a carat. And the market corrected itself, things happened. In 08, when everything dropped, so did prices in the diamond market. In the current environment, there's a softening in the natural market. If you look and you amortize out over the last 30 years, I believe the numbers show that diamonds have appreciated approximately 3 to 5% a year if you amortize it out. As the economy comes back and the demand overseas in different markets strengthen, you'll see natural go back up, as it has. I'm not educated enough to speak about the factors why the synthetics have dropped, but we all have to remember about 1 out of every 3,000 stones that's recovered from the earth is of gem quality. The other 2,999 are industrial. There's such a growing demand in industry for diamonds, that's where that shortfall has been made up. And my hat goes off to Amish and the lab-grown community for being able to create something. And it's a market unto itself.
Yeah, and Olivia and then Amish.
I think when it comes to engagement rings and bridal specifically, when with diamonds, it's not an exact like supply and demand formula, because there is so much emotion, similar to what was said. There's a cap to what someone will spend to feel like it's a special stone. It's worth like that commitment, that significance in your relationship. So no one, no matter what, is gonna want to spend less on their engagement ring than their dinner celebrating their engagement. So no matter how far the lab-grown wholesale pricing is going to go, because there's endless supply, it's jewelers and retailers that are going to uphold that margin to keep the demand, because if the price is too extreme between a natural and a lab-grown, that is going to drive a lot of people away, at least in like the bridal sector. And I would say like we just have to be like really transparent about, you know, what the information is. There's so much misinformation around, you know, that they're the exact same thing, that they have the same value. And I think as long as retailers are like transparent about like the pricing, the value, what the real true differences are, that at the end of the day is what the consumer deserves and is looking for, and especially when it comes to such a significant purchase.
Okay, Amish.
So when we talk about value, I think the only value diamonds have is emotional. What you pay across the counter is a transactional price. I think this is one thing that the industry has been telling the consumer for years. Diamonds have value. Diamonds have value. No, diamonds as a component don't have value. They gain value on an emotional basis when they change hands. So the price of the same GVS to a Tiffany's to 47th Street might be 5 times different. And I think this is the one thing that we need to stop telling consumers, because it's just like the myth of rarity. I think the myth of rarity is also broken because every other girl has one and we still call it rare. I think so these are the misconceptions that led an entire category from 0 to $15 billion, where we're running at 2 out of every 3 engagement rings and will be at 8 out of every 10 engagement rings in the next 3 years. And when we look at the fashion category, what took 8 years for the engagement category will only take 3 years for the fashion category to be at 50% with lab grown. Are diamonds grown for above the earth diamonds? Yes, they are diamonds. They can have a different nomenclature to be clear with the consumer, but earth mine diamonds and lab grown diamonds are both diamonds. And this is the most interesting part, that with less than probably 10 billboards globally, the consumer drove this category based on education and the information they had, and they took away $15 billion from another category without being pushed or being heavily promoted. So I think if both the categories really stop and understand it for the moment, because we keep talking about mine diamond prices coming up. Mine diamond prices is not coming up. In my main podcast itself, I said they're going to go down another 20% just this year, because right now, everything in certain segments of the mine diamonds are actually trying to, in an odd way, compete with where lab grown is, because the retailers that are selling lab grown diamonds and offering the consumer a choice of earth mine and lab grown are seeing the conversion rate at the consumer level. So I think this entire thing about these being consistently separate is probably the reason that where we have issues at consumer level, where the consumer says, I either rather just not get a diamond or get a lab-grown diamond.
One of the things that people have speculated about over the years is, could lab-grown actually expand the overall market, right? Because you're making it more affordable, and presumably even, you know, diamonds that, you know, maybe people would have bought moissanite or CZ, now they will buy a lab-grown. You know, you talked about 50 million being...
To say something like you said about moissanite and CZ, we have to remember they're chemical-based products. They are not diamonds.
Yeah,
when
no,
you're talking about lab-grown diamonds, you're talking about diamonds.
Right.
And thankfully, the consumer is very clear that my choice is between diamonds from below the earth and above the earth. And this is why they brought it to 60%. The additional sales where you'll see the growth of the category is this next decade. And this is going to happen because the increased amount of consumers you'll see in the fashion category, the engagements are going to happen irrespective, but fashion category is going to see a major expansion, especially in the gem industry, outside of the uses, of course, in the other industries.
I think that, once again, I can't speak about the synthetic or lab-grown industry and where it's going, what it's making. But I think the journey of a diamond is pretty spectacular. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. The formation of diamonds started about 3.5 billion years ago. By the way, this information is from De Beers, where I got this from. About 200 to 250 million years ago, the Earth had extreme volcanic activity, and that's what pushed it to the surface, or just below the surface, where it's being recovered today. And modern man started about 160,000 years ago. So we're very young compared to this journey that started 3.5 billion years ago. I think it's pretty spectacular. I have 5 children, and they're all so different. I've never looked at 2 stones that are the same. Every stone has its own identifier, its own fingerprint, birth, whatever language you want to attach to it. And when you're going through goods, even after I'm 4th generation diamantaire, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I still get excited when I see certain goods, and I speak to Ronnie or Jeff or any of my other colleagues, and I'll get a phone call and be like, you have to come take a look at this. There's such a story behind it, and I think it's exciting. And when I have 5 children, and for Mother's Day, I had made my wife a pendant and my daughter and my 2 daughters earrings that are matching. And there's a specific jewelry designer that here I could have made anything, and there's actually somebody that helped me make this. And are earrings just earrings? I would say no. It has nothing to do with that specifically. It has everything to do with the story. And when my wife turns around and says, in 30 years is the best gift you ever gave me, and my 2 daughters turn around independently and come up to me, I love that I get to wear what mom is wearing, there is an intrinsic value to it. There's a story. It's exciting. I've never seen anyone walk into a jewelry store to buy a diamond and they were angry about it. It's a really special time and everything that goes with it. And this is from someone who doesn't know anything about retail, and I've never been in a retail store, so to speak, concerning our industry. But if I get excited about it, and I'm looking at an awful lot of goods on a daily or annual basis, there's something special there.
And to go off of what you said in terms of value, I mean, yes, chemically they are the same, just like you can have oil painting painted by Picasso and another painting that's just as beautiful, which one has value long term? I would say that in terms of moissanites and CZs, lab-grown diamonds, I think, are a way better option than a simulant because they look just as beautiful as diamonds. They're more affordable, and I think that's the category that they are going to be in. Fashion jewelry, I think it's a great option, but when it comes to something emotional, something that you want to pass down and invest in, I do believe that the story and the history and the origin of the natural diamond is something that, you know, the industry needs to talk about a little bit more. And there are amazing stories like diamonds from Botswana where they give back directly to the country of origin, and that's just something. They have incredible stories that just aren't told, and they just need to be differentiated and marketed just as well as the lab-grown story has been marketed.
Okay, okay, yeah, Ron.
You know, I'm sorry, but the panel is about the state of the diamond industry, not the bumping heads of the diamond industry. So what we're trying to do here is talk about where we are today with the diamond industry, where we're going with the diamond industry, and not, you know, look at lab-grown versus natural. That's a great panel on its own, which that we can put boxing gloves on and have some fun with. But we're here to talk about the state of the diamond industry and where we're at. And that's what we need to focus on, okay? So we've said before, I think the state of the diamond industry will be strong. We need to get through some trying times at the moment. You know, you have Russell here who has retail stores and can certainly speak to where they are. I mean, it was thrilling to hear Russell say that the last 13 months, now they brand their jewelry, obviously, but for the last 13 months, he's had a good time. Business has been, quote, good for you. That's what we like to hear. If we talk to the brands that are out there, let's talk to the branded stores, those that carry the Rolex watches, the Patek watches, the high ends. They're having a good time right now. Who is suffering? This is what we need to show everybody,
Okay,
whether it's lab-grown or natural.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about branding. You have a D2C brand. Russell has a brand. Amish has a brand. I mean, I think one of the big issues in both the lab-grown and the natural diamond industry is a lack of differentiation between products and a lack of brands. I think that's been kind of widely acknowledged for years. So I'm just curious, you know, how you feel people can kind of get over that. As far as, you know, making yourself known, because it's not cheap to make a brand, as I'm sure you know.
Look, it's not easy to do, you know, without creating a brand new shape that no one's seen before, or an identifiable shape. We do distribute the Ashoka, which is a identifiable, branded, globally branded diamond, but without creating new ones, to do it within the context of the more common shapes is not easy, and so that's something that we had been looking to do and kind of create the perfect version, make some tweaks to call it our own, to add transparency, we're you know, to add some of the elements that are out there, from origin to traceability. We have some other you know, things we package at retail to really differentiate ourselves. Again, it's not easy, but it's a commitment that we made. We doubled down in a declining environment, because we do believe in the long term, you know, of it, and we need to, for the clients out there are still a large amount that are seeking the natural. Ironically, even within this, we're finding we also sell to about 100 retail stores across the country who carry this program, and we thought as a premium diamond this would really be a 2 carat plus type sale. We're actually starting to see 3/4 carats in our program, and it's made sense of talking to it. It's if that client is not looking to get size and get 2 carats, they want something, and now they want the best, and they're willing to pay up, you know, a little bit more, or whatever the premium is for that. And so we've been seeing that, and that's actually a more recent phenomenon, to see the 3/4 carat and 1 carat, which is not a place we thought we would be. And I think that is because I think there is a shift that's starting. He says back to natural a little bit. I think as retailers tell the story, I don't want to get into it. I believe there's 2 different categories, but there was a push element to lab-grown diamonds on behalf of the retailers, especially retailers I talked about are the higher end, the Rolex and the Patek dealers, and there was a legitimacy and a push element to it. When they got into it, their price points were high, like I said, 10, 20, 30,000 at very, very good margins. And a lot of them knew that they might have been a short-term play. And a lot of them I speak to them to now, so it's not anecdotally. They are now at a place where, they're in it, and they're not saying they're going to get out of it, but they do need to push back towards natural because it has cannibalized, or they see where it's going and they need to make the shift back. And so it's important, back to the branding point, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's an important thing to do. Really, in any business, whether you're upstream, midstream, downstream, is if you're, too much of our business is generic and commoditized, that if you're not doing it, you're doing. My grandfather always said, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And so it's kind of what we always try to do. And again, not easy, but it's what we do.
Okay, Mish?
I think the way I see it is people don't buy socks without looking at their brand. And I think we've been in an industry where we've been trying to sell consumers diamonds without an identity. So I 100% agree that branding is key to the future of the industry. Coming from a family of over 90 years that actually did retail and has only been in the fine jewelry segment, I think the opportunity that both categories have today is design, innovation, and of course sustainability. When we look for ourselves, I think the transition and having ALTR as an OEM supplier to a lot of brands globally, Javar directly actually converses same thing. You move from just jewelry design also to diamond design. I think one of the things this is very, very important for us to understand, diamond is a component. The jewel is what the consumer buys. The jewel is what they interact with. We introduced actually the world's first single diamond alphabet collection, actually just last month at JCK, which we'll get into stores. This is where the industry and the category needs to move in. Some things are going to be possible on the earth mine diamond category side, and some things are going to be lab grown. And as a family that actually is vested in both categories, you just were very clear that branding is critical and building value through these three pillars is going to be the most important thing.
And Olivia, you deal with branding as a brander. Is there anything that you think is kind of, since, and I guess it basically goes back to De Beers, the fact that De Beers used to promote the entire category, and that's everybody kind of relied on them to spur demand. Do you see that ever changing, that more branded diamonds come into the market of whatever kind?
I think, to be successful and differentiate yourself in the industry where there's like so much competition and fragmentation, you can't be everything for everyone. You really have to find your niche and lean into that. So that's the reason, why we've decided to stick to only natural, even though we have no like skin in the game. We could definitely sell lab grown if we wanted to. I'm not like invested in anything. In terms of branded diamonds or being able to in category like brand like actual diamonds to get more value, I think it can be done if it's done properly. And it really takes like education to the consumer to understand, why am I paying a premium for certain diamonds? And I think the future in that, at least in the natural side, would be telling that origin story. That's like the next big wave. If De Beers did decide to, they have a good story to tell. They have a great story to tell about like the natural diamonds, where they come from, and it's just not being told properly. I think consumers are not educated on natural diamond origin. They think that all natural diamonds are blood diamonds. They come from one country, which is Africa, and they don't even know that they come from Russia at all, or Canada. So first and foremost, it's, category marketing the origin story, and then having the consumers go to the retailers to ask for that specific thing and being able to provide that. And I do believe people will pay a premium for that.
Okay, do we, I have a lot more questions, but do we have any questions out here? I'll look at this gentleman here.
So, you said diamond design. Can you expand on what diamond design is?
Sure. until now, if you look at the last 100 years, primarily diamond shapes, you have about 10 diamond shapes with primarily one shape rounds leading at about 85% of the sales, with almost all the other sales at about 14.5%. Lab-grown diamonds created an entire new, or more than created, opened the possibility of designing diamonds. And what do I mean by designing diamonds? For a client, we're actually cutting single diamond teddy bears for one of our European clients. We cut stars, six cornered stars. Last month, the collection we launched, 26 alphabets. Each individual one, 7 millimeters small, 9, 15, and 20 millimeter alphabets that are faceted, have light refraction. Diamond step cuts. Step cuts have been around, but precision based, where it's a fusion between artisans and using technology. So when we're talking about branding and when we're talking about taking this industry to the next level, it's not only going to be about jewelry design, it's how do you fuse diamond design plus jewelry design and create a story that's unique to your brand. Some things are going to be possible. In each of the categories will have their own strengths. But when I see from the lab-grown diamond category, I think that is the next big conversation, because one thing we have to always remember, and I think this is where, again, coming from a family that's almost 100 years in business, the value is not in the component, it's in the creation. And this is something we as an industry keep forgetting, and that's where the diamond design conversation comes.
You had a question, Martha? Yeah.
Thank you, Matla Masere from Okavango Diamond Company. I've been listening to these very interesting discussions, and I'm picking up a lot from the retail side. What I'm not picking up is what is the topic itself, because I thought we were going to be focusing on the state of the industry and how we then improve the situation for all the players. I get a feeling that we're talking about how to survive as a retailer, which is the best way to get your share of the limited or reduced market. So maybe if we could also have pointers as to, rather than looking at it at inward looking and look outward and look at the whole industry, how do the producers benefit? How do the retail benefit? Like everybody in the value chain. So maybe if emphasis on that area could come out, it would help some of us appreciate better some of the challenges and what needs to be done to get ourselves out of the rut that we are in right now. Thank you.
So do you have a specific question that you would like to know, or a specific thing that you're interested in hearing about?
That what is the problem and when are we going to get out of the problem? What needs to happen?
So
because all we know is the market has shrunk. All we know is the major producers, most of them are running at a loss. Those are facts that are published. Everybody knows that. So what are we doing to turn the situation such that people can become more profitable and the industry at large can grow? I'm not even talking about lab versus natural. I'm just talking in general terms. How do you grow the business?
And let me, I guess, and I'll get to Amish. There is kind of anecdotal talk, and we've heard two people here mention it, that there is, let's say, we won't say a shift to natural, but a boost in natural sales, that natural has kind of perhaps turned the corner or bottomed out a little bit. And I was just wondering if people also have heard that. But I'll talk with Amish.
I think I completely agree. And I think the first and the most important thing we need to do is stop with the nonsense between the two categories. I think as an industry that we are absolutely not focusing outside and looking at the bigger competition, but we're so focused that we consistently are only bickering between the categories. Is it lab grown? The lab grown guys are like, okay, how about I throw dirt on the mine diamond guys? And the mine diamond guys, again, it's a choice to the consumer. What I never understand is, why are we as an industry not focusing on growing the diamond and fine jewelry industry, but focusing on how to show each other down or figure out how to take each other's share. Why are we not focusing on how to make sure that next year he's not buying her a Louis Vuitton bag for a birthday, and actually her telling him, you know what, I love those beautiful earrings. Doesn't matter which category they are, because the suffering is on both sides of the category. It's not going to be on one. You know, one grows and then that's going to mature out and then they're going to bleed. So the bleeding, I think as an industry, we really need to focus on growth. And I completely agree that most of these panels that start in a certain way always become an LGD against Earth Mind. And hopefully, I think there is actually a conversation that says, why don't we sit together and say, how do we grow the circle bigger and take away from Apple, take away from Louis Vuitton, and take away from Gucci, and actually grow our category rather than trying to fight on who's better and who's not and what's the nomenclature and those things.
Okay, I mean, first of all, I agree. It'd be great for the category to increase. But I do want to ask the question which I just asked, which is that, you know, you can call it a pivot to natural or a shift to natural. We don't necessarily have to call it, but is there a sense that natural diamond sales perhaps have bottomed out and are on the increase? And or is that just kind of anecdotal? Or
You know, let's not talk about bottoming out, okay? I don't look at the natural side as bottoming out. I look at that we're actually, in fact, having a slow market at the moment due to a number of factors that we said earlier, all right? We can look at a lot of different things. Restaurants bottoming out, auto sales bottoming out.
The luxury, I should also say, the luxury category, particularly watches, are doing very poorly right now.
Right?
Right.
So we look at this. And then, by the way, you bring up about natural and lab grown. Lab grown, because it started from zero, had an upward trend. Natural is still a bigger part, of which your family is very large in the business, okay, has a bigger percentage of the sales. I couldn't agree with Amish more, and I think all of us would agree with him to say we need to grow the category. We look at, and I think De Beers is going to do a wonderful job come the fall. We've heard this, that they're going to do some advertising on behalf of the industry and to grow the category again. But we talk about, you know, whether it's jewelry and your comments about, you know, being a component rather than, well, you know, we also look at as the main stone as being an important component of the diamond ring or the jewelry that you're making. Let's face it, okay, that's what it is. And same thing with your lab grown. It's an important component of the overall jewelry. How do we, you know, as Mr. Metla said here, how do we sustain this? How do we grow the category, as Amish is saying? These are all challenges that we're facing at a moment where the economy is not doing well. So how do we sustain ourselves? It's what a lot of our companies are doing. Any which one of us are that in this room that run a business, we're looking to sustain our businesses and grow our businesses in a downward market. So, you know, all I can say is, you know, tighten your belts a little bit, and we're in for a little bit of a ride for a few more months, I'm hoping. I don't have a crystal ball, and hopefully we'll start to see, to use your phrase, bottoming out? No, but hopefully we'll see an upward trend from here.
Well, bottoming out usually is beginning of an upward trend, yes. But
We've come to our low.
Rob, I think, and maybe a different facet to your question that I think is extremely important is the health of the industry and the foundation of the industry. February 24th, 2022, the industry got hit with some really struggling news and had to pivot. And what I'm referring to are the sanctions. And due to incredible work by many, the World Diamond Council, Feriel, Ronnie, Elodie, and the rest of the team, and the amount of time and effort that industry has spent. And as I said, first thing I said was I look around the room, and there are some really incredible people, Tiffany and Sarah, and that really have spent a lot of time to make sure that the very foundation of the industry is strong. And the way industry pivoted and set itself up for success when it really could have been a very damaging time. So I go back to, yes, is the overall economy right now globally a struggle for the diamond industry? Sure, for all very good reasons. Will that change? Of course. History repeats itself, it's cyclical. But the very foundation of the industry, I believe is very strong, and I think that's something to be proud of. A lot of really hard work has gone in to ensure that. So on the rebound, just to help with your words there, Rob, I think it's only building on something strong rather than a house of cards. And to me, that's the most important. So is there a little bit of pain now? Sure. Will there be again in another 20 years, 50 years, 100 years? Sure, it's going to happen. But as an overall, I think we're all pretty lucky, and I think we're involved in something pretty exceptional. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, and I think we all agree that the kind of hostilities between lab and natural are not healthy, they're not productive, they're not constructive. What can we all do? You know, everyone is like, hey, you know, we need to turn down the temperature in the country. How can we do that in the industry so that people are not fighting with each other? Any thoughts?
Vote.
Hope?
It's a loaded question, Rob. I think that
Everybody hates my questions today. I don't know what
it's a loaded
really
question.
blowing this.
Honestly, the bottom line is we need to work together. Simple as that. You know, stop all this mudslinging and all. Let us concentrate on natural. Let us concentrate on the lab grown. You have your businesses. Let's concentrate. Let's not concentrate in throwing mud, because in the end, everything today is out there for the consumer to hear, read, listen to, and it doesn't do the category any good. So let's all, you know, learn to live together. Let's not throw stones in a glass house, and work together. And you know, it is what it is, but it's got to stop. No question about that, Rob.
Iris has a quick, it has to be a quick question though.
Ronnie, I could not agree more. But I think also we have to see. Okay, I could not agree more with what you say, but I think we have to really invest more in what I would call, maybe Matt, I really loved your word, you don't like transparency, but kindness, but in the trust stability of the industry, like Mark Hanna always says, because I think we are now at a tipping point for the industry, that if this consumer will find certain diamonds in its product and they're not disclosed correctly, and I'm not, you know, we're talking about lab grown versus natural, we're talking about Russian diamonds, depending on what's happening. If you look at what the regulations are doing and pushing on the product passport, what is coming, we need to be ready as an industry, and otherwise we will lose market. So I can only say, yeah, I support what you say, but we also have got to do it.
Okay, we're gonna finish up, but I want Matthew to talk a little bit about making sure that the product integrity.
Okay, can I just jump in here? So we have about 3 minutes left. So I hate to do this, but I just want to give you a sense that we're coming to an end point.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Well,
about
for those who know me, 3 minutes for a long story short is, I'm usually like long story really long. The Natural Diamond Council created something called Project Assure. So if you go to Project Assure, Google it, it's an independent testing standard for all DVI's diamond verification instruments, so you understand the accuracy of the actual device. And at that point in time, you have the ability of verifying what you have is natural, is lab grown, or whatever one's intentions are. So there is technology today. Once again, Project Assure, sponsored by the Natural Diamond Council, And it's very challenging samples in natural, simulants, synthetics, across the board, trying to, if you will, fool the machines. It's the most challenging, and it shares the actual results independently done. And at that point in time, that's part of the health and what is helping to protect the industry. So one can absolutely verify what is coming through their office.
And Olivia's going to have the last word, quick.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Iris. At the end of the day, like, these are consumer products, and the consumer needs to feel, you know, trust in whatever product they're purchasing. So I think the most important thing in whatever category is clarity, transparency, and, you know, getting rid of misinformation so the consumer can feel confident in whatever purchase they end up making and feel like empowered that they are making the right decision, whichever decision that it is. So I
Okay.
think that's the most important.
Anybody have anything they want to plug? You want to plug a website or robbatesauthor.com? Anyone? Okay, that's it.
Your book.
What's your website? Author NYC, right?
Javar, JEVAR.co.
Okay, all right, and that's it. Clearcut.com.
And
Thank you.
actually, that company name, if you read the bios that are in every packet, you will see that it is not just ALTR that is listed. So you will have the correct spelling of it because it is in that compiled document. And before you all leave, or we move to the next activity, I want to say the following. For those of you who came for the Diamond panel and your interest is piqued, we welcome you with open arms tomorrow because many of these issues will be picked up, although not necessarily the specific discussion of lab versus natural, but things like transparency, credibility, a whole host of issues that have been key to this discussion. Due diligence, chain of custody will be the focus of a lot of discussion tomorrow. And I want to thank everyone on this panel for a very both civil and spirited conversation. And I hope that we have lived up to the statements beforehand. We will have another such conversation very soon, and we encourage healthy debate, and we look forward to seeing it flourish. So now, because I wear so many hats, what I'm going to tell you is that we are going to adjourn to the other room and have a glass of wine or whatever it is that you drink. And, but then, and we are doing this because, you know, there was I can't remember what it was, that it was stretch your sillies. But we're gonna do that, and then I'm gonna bring you back in here for the presentation of our awards, when you still get to drink. So.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bates, thank you. Mr. Moderator, Mr. Bates. Mr. Bates and moderator.
I'm going to kind of do this in a very summary way at the moment, is to thank our sponsors. And one of the reasons we do that is not just because we are grateful for the support, which we are, because as a gentleman for whom I have very high regard from the mining sector said to me a few minutes ago, and we were talking about something that is not a conference. Everything costs money. That is the reality. But we are also hugely privileged to have terrific relationships with our sponsors, for whom we have high regard and from whom I learn a great deal. And first we go to the people, then we seek the resources. So please know that that is a guiding principle for us. I'm not going to run through the names. Hopefully I can do that at lunch, because I need to move us on, or Erin, whom you have all by now probably met, who is director at IAC, will have my head. And then you could just have a little head up here and my body could run around and do other things, but it might not be so great. So I am sure that I am forgetting a lot of things that are important to tell you. One of them, however, is that our introductions tend to be brief. There is in your packets a bio document. It is ordered very reductively, alphabetically by last name, for every person on the program. And you can absolutely find out more, but one of the things that yesterday may have revealed is that everyone digs deep into their own experience when answering questions. So that is another reason, in a sense, we are sort of top line in our approach to these things. So, okay, this is New York. We are still a blue state. I know we're not supposed to get political, but we are still a blue state. And this is the New York Times. Now, today, it so happens that Senator Menendez has been convicted and there is a Republican convention going on. So those are the headlines. But it could have been that we would have been together on a different day, and one of the things that we might have seen is a discussion about wildfires, heat, rain, etc., happening in places where they've not manifested themselves thusly. But at the same time, one of the topics of discussion that is getting an increasing amount of attention, and should, is looking beyond net zero, climate change actions, and the just transition. And this is, in a sense, the first time we've framed climate discussion that way. It is a beginning. There are elements of this that dovetail with the conversation about producing countries retaining greater value, and also with human rights and, from my perspective, cultural heritage. But these topics all fit together, and these are the urgencies of our time. So I'm very pleased to introduce Stuart Bailey, who is the Chief Corporate Affairs and Sustainability Officer of Anglo Ashanti Gold, Shari Gittleman, Senior Director, External Relations from Newmont Mining, Iris van der Wieken, who is the Executive Director and Secretary General of the Watch and Jewelry Initiative, and John Mulligan, who is Director and Climate Lead of the World Gold Council. And, the floor is theirs. Thank you, everybody.